So I welcome you all today. This is as a part of Aycmqa Qatar series of webinars, and we are happy to host a great session today, how faith-based interventions can support our current facing biodiversity and climate crisis. So we couldn't ask for better speakers today. This is a great speakers we have. And I'm also fortunate to know Iyad for quite some time, and to know that he's part of an initiative within the UNEP, which is completely working on Faith for Earth initiative, which is quite an interesting platform. Again, much of the people are not aware of, especially our region again. So this would be a good way to get to know what is because once the announcement of the event was called off, many people started asking us, oh, what is this Faith for Earth initiative? We never heard of. How come it's part of UN environment? I mean, it's UN, right? I said, yeah. So probably Iyad will be highlighting what it is all about and how you can get involved. So this is something very interesting. And Mr. Kamran will be telling us what they have been doing back in the UK and how we might replicate something which is very important in our part of the world too, how we can learn good practices and etc. So let me introduce our wonderful speakers today. Dr. Iyad is the Director for Faith for Earth at the United Nations Environment Program. Dr. Iyad has more than 35 years of experience with international organizations, both private and scientific institutions. Dr. Iyad expertise focus on strategic planning and sustainable development, water resource management, knowledge and innovation, and interfaith collaborating on environmental issues. Currently, Dr. Iyad is the lead principal advisor on engaging with faith-based organizations and the director of Faith for Environment Initiative, Faith for Earth Initiative at the UNEP. Dr. Iyad adopts a holistic, multi-sectoral approach for development of ensuring cross-thematic integration with internal and external partners. Dr. Iyad holds a doctorate degree in biochemical engineering from University of Bath in the UK, and an outstanding graduate of Virtual Development Academy, John's University, and also BA in chemical engineering from University of Jordan. Thank you, Iyad, and welcome. And our next speaker is Dr. Kamran. I want to introduce both. So once Mr. Iyad finishes off his intervention, then Mr. Kamran come in. So Mr. Kamran Shezad is a global environmental specialist with practical field and managerial experience in sustainable development, expanding over 17 years. Kamran's focus is on sustainability and tackling environmental degradation as a tool to fight poverty, especially in countries across Asia and Africa. He's a sustainability lead at Bahu Trust and the climate change advisor to the mosque and imams at National Advisory Board in the United Kingdom. I welcome both of our wonderful speakers today, and also all those who are joining us online and virtually, and those who will be joining in the coming days through this recorded version. I invite Dr. Iyad to come up, to take up the mic.
Thank you, Nishad, and thanks to the Arab Young Climate Movement for inviting us to this webinar and engaging on the Faith for Earth initiative. And happy Ramadan to everybody, Ramadan Kareem, and I hope in a few days we will celebrate. We all know that we are facing tremendous and unprecedented challenges. Of course, as a climate movement, you know that we have been recording the highest temperatures ever recorded. And that started in 2014 and then continues to record the highest temperatures. We know that the devastating impacts of climate change are being seen today and demonstrated in the hurricanes, intense weather. You have probably witnessed that in increased sandstorms in Qatar and everywhere, the forest fires in Australia, and the different devastating and socio-economically impactful events that we have been seeing. It is not only climate change. We know without a doubt from the scientific evidence that is presented in the International Panel on Biodiversity, that we are facing the risks of 1 million species going to be extinct. And that is just in a decade time. But however, already we have lost 20% of species that we know of. We are certainly today facing another challenge, which is COVID-19, and we are seeing the devastating socioeconomic impact. But yet the hardest times we are expecting yet to come. But why are we seeing those unprecedented events in terms of climate change, biodiversity loss, and even the pandemic increase of diseases caused by animals? Well, everybody knows that our population is around 8 billion now, 7 point something billion people, while only 20 years ago, we were 5 billion people. And we are expecting to be 9 billion people by 2050. So population growth, urbanization, the change in the lifestyles that we have been practicing over the past at least only 100 years, that is all compounding and complexing the challenges that we are facing. Unfortunately, also, we are wasting more than 30% of our food, sometimes even before it gets to our tables. And at the same time, we see 1 in 9 people go to bed hungry. So these unprecedented times are very challenging. In 2018, when the Security Council met, the leaders of the world, the governments, announced that it is the most threatening threat to human security is not nuclear war, nor it is the terrorism or the conflicts around the world, but it is climate change. Last month, few weeks back, in April 2020, UN Secretary General said that the pandemic is the gravest challenge facing us since the establishment of the UN organization 70 years ago. Now, these unprecedented responses will require, unprecedented challenges will require unprecedented responses. We cannot go back to business as usual. And as Einstein said, you cannot solve the problems of that you have created with the same type of thinking that you have created the problem itself. So what do we need? We need to adopt accelerated approaches. We need to scale up our efforts for the planet. We need to engage in a transformational future. But most important of all, we need ethical approaches, approaches that are built on values, on morals, on principles. Yes, we can employ technology. We say that this is the fourth industrial revolution that will, build on the Internet of Things and the artificial intelligence. But I say that the revolution that we need to have is a behavioral revolution. So we can change the way we deal with nature. Now, let's say, why faith-based organizations? We know that the science, the statistics, the surveys tell us that more than 85% of the global population believe in something, believe in or a belief. So they have a point of reference. We know that faith-based organizations and religions have been working for centuries in support of humanity, providing, eradicating poverty, to even providing infrastructure for the to live. I guess there somewhere with somebody.
Lara, if you can mute your.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right. So, but also religions actually dictate what we eat. You know, in Islam, we're not allowed to eat pork. We're not allowed to drink alcohol. We're asked to dress in a certain manner. So religions in general, not only Islam, dictates how we behave in life. So this power, in addition to the economic power of religions, it is probably surprising to some that the faith-based organizations are the fourth largest economic power on earth. Faith organizations own more than 50% of schools worldwide. They own more than 50% of hospitals. They own more than 8% of habitable land on earth. But most importantly, they own more than 10% of the total financial institutions at the global level. So the economic power of faith-based organization cannot be challenged and is very much important to tap into. Now, acknowledging all of this power, we at the United Nations Environment Program, when we thought of the implementation and delivering on the SDGs, we found out that, of course, governments alone cannot achieve the SDGs, private sector alone cannot achieve, and so on. So powerful sector of the society. So we came up with the Faith for Earth initiative, and we came up with a mission for this initiative. The mission is to inspire, empower, and engage with faith-based organizations to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 2030. The vision is we aspire to reach to a world where all creations live in balance. We're seeing the interaction of creations at the global level on Earth, and how the playing with these interactions and changing the dynamics is leading to major catastrophes. So we came up with this initiative with three important goals. The first goal is to inspire action by faith-based organizations who have been actually effectively supporting communities at different levels, local, global, and regional. But we want to engage them more in policy making and policy decisions, where we adopt values and principles of religions into the policy making process and engage them in the implementation as well. The second goal, which is supportive to this goal, we want that engagement to be informed by science. So we want the science faith nexus to be the leading power to empower faith-based organizations when they talk about climate change, biodiversity. They rely on science, but also the scientists to have the values and principles of religions when they design implementation processes and so on. And the third goal is, as I said, the faith-based organizations are the fourth largest economic power. We want that power and that contribution to contribute to sustainable development, so to finance the process of sustainability. So greening the investments, greening the assets of faith-based organizations. Now, what are the expected outcomes or outputs of this coalition? First of all, we are working on establishing a global Faith for Earth coalition. This coalition will be composed of 4 different pillars. The first one is the Council of Eminent Leaders. We want to bring the highest level religious authority from different religions to come, whether to sit in one room or to convey one message, which is the need for to protect humanity based on the commonality between the different religions. All religions that exist nowadays, they have one common understanding, which is stewardship of the environment. So all religions believe that we are here to protect the environment rather than to destroy it. The second council is the Council of Youth. We know that young people are actually, or have started actually leading global efforts. So we want to mobilize this power of the young people, especially young faith leaders who have enthusiasm, who have been witnessing these challenges and they want to do something. So we want to empower them and provide them with a platform where they can do that work based on their values and principles of their religions. The third council is the Council of CEOs of faith-based organizations. We know these organizations actually have been providing support to the poor, to empower women, to provide different types of support at the global level, reaching to hundreds of countries or localities. They exist almost in every corner of the world. So with their power, we want to have them engage in the process on environmental stewardship. And the last council is the Council of the Science and Religion or Religious Understanding and Teaching. So we want the understanding between theology, religious studies, and so on, and sciences to be working together. So, of course, all of that will continue to be centered around the SDGs. You know, we have 17 SDGs tackling all walks of life and so on. Especially there are 6 or 7 SDGs that are very intrinsic to the environment. So if we take, so there are noises again. So if we take, for example, SDG 13 on climate change and try to translate that into the work of religious leaders, you will be amazed to know that there are 37 million churches around the world and around 4 million mosques and many thousands and thousands of temples. So these are powerful points of not only reflection, but also minarets for sustainability. So if we imagine the 37 million churches, 4 million mosques, install solar systems, immediately we will be reducing millions and millions of tons of carbon dioxide, contributing to sustainable local development. Imagine all of these houses of worship, if they plant trees. So we will be immediately, if we plant a tree every Friday or every Sunday or every Saturday, we will be planting every week millions and millions, and so on and so forth. So this is how we can work of religion to the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, how young people can contribute. We know that we, or the young people at the global level, represent 50% of the population. Sometimes it is 70%, sometimes it's 30%, but young people represent 100% of the future. So their role is very important. So what can they do? They can be part of the decision-making process. Young people need to sit on the table of decision-making. They can impact elections, electing people, politicians who support the green economy, the green agenda, and so on, and can at least work in their neighborhoods and have a great impact. Of course, young people can share knowledge, can with their social expertise on social media or social gatherings, can share the knowledge about how important to protect the environment. And of course, they can be the leaders of citizenship. They can adopt themselves the principles of a green citizen, a citizen who believes in protecting Earth and its resources. So what can we do post-COVID-19? Now we're facing all of this lockdown, all of the socioeconomic impacts. What can we do? First of all, we can work on our behaviors. We need to change our attitude towards consumerism and be sustainable advocates and practitioners. So behavioral change is very important, and we're not saying we are coming up with a new set of behaviors or new set of values or principles. We're saying go back to your religious belief and just adopt it and just believe in it and practice it. The second, we need to build back better. We have seen the urbanization, being fully dependent on fossil fuels and so on, and we have seen where that is taking us. So we need to build back better and not go back to fossil-based economy. And third, what is happening now is that we have played with the sources of these viruses. We have started eating live animals, transmitting diseases and viruses that are happily living in animals but not causing any harm to animals or humanity. But since we have started mingling with that, we have started moving or impacting the life and creation itself by creating new viruses that are threatening humanity. And fourth, we are seeing a new emerging environmental issues. Yes, we see less CO2, we see less air pollution, but we are seeing more medical waste being generated. And that is going now to waterways, to fields, and being thrown into the streets of some cities. So we need to be mindful of that. And finally, we cannot go back to the normal, the brown economy that we have lived with for so many years. We need to transition into a different type of economy, an economy that is inclusive and that is green. So thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I hope this sheds some light on what we're trying to do and the hope that we have on engaging with the young generation and the leaders of today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Iyad. Thank you for bringing up those points, and also especially how young people can contribute to all the ideas and what are the synergies between faith organizations. I mean, the number is so huge. People never saw that can be a dominant factor, which can be considered in our joint fight for environmental activism and for environmental justice. Without much ado, I invite Mr. Kamran Shezad to give up idea what they are doing as a part of their organization back in the UK, and what are the good things we as a youth organization can learn from the faith-based organizations like one you are running back in the UK.
Thank you, Nishad, for the invitation, and to Dr. Iyad. I think Dr. Iyad's nailed it, everything we need to do, and how we need to do it, and how we make that transition, what we need to do. Getting religious people on board isn't always easy, and I suppose I want to start off by talking about as a faith-based organization and as a Muslim faith-based organization, re-exploring or refining those values, especially within the environmental teaching, is not easy, especially as we've lost touch with them over the last 100, 150 years. So Dr. Iyad mentioned that, look, we don't have to reinvent them, they're already there, but our culture has changed. So the challenge we're facing now is how do we reconnect with those old values? Because as a Muslim and as a, there's no such thing as Islam and the environment. It's all interconnected, it's all one, our teachings, and it's just that it's become a separate thing. And so at the Bahu Trust, we've been using a faith-based approach to try to become more green and more environmentally friendly. And I just want to go through some of those faith-based teachings and how we've started and how we've started reconnecting. And I want to go back to 2010, where His Royal Highness Prince Charles spoke extensively on Islam and the environment. In fact, if you just YouTube it, Prince Charles, Islam and the Environment, and there's a lengthy talk, I think either Cambridge University or Oxford University. And during this excellent interview, he gave this really good overview, and he mentioned two really important personal findings. Firstly, he concluded that people were more likely to care for the environment if they were told to, that this is a religious responsibility. And secondly, he asserted that no religion stresses the importance of green matters more than the religion of Islam. And these are the values that I tie in to Muslims. And I suppose different faith groups have their own set of values and their own language and their own motivations that reaches out to them. And I suppose it's hard to disagree with His Royal Highness on this, because the teachings in our religion are inherently environmental. And biodiversity is celebrated in the Holy Quran throughout. In fact, even the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he championed environmental rights and concerns 14 centuries ago. And you know, our life on Earth is made up of a complex set of interrelated ecosystems, which should be maintained in a natural balance. For example, if there's no pollinating insects, there's on Earth like bees and butterflies, there wouldn't be any fruit. Without plants to provide nectar and pollen, there wouldn't be no food to sustain the bees. Bees and plants are dependent on each other. We're all reliant on each other. And so many of the ecosystems, we all rely on a wide variety of plants and animals interacting with each other. And the Holy Quran mentions this balance very beautifully in Surah Rahman. You know, Allah raised the heavens and established a balance so that you do not transgress the balance and give weight. Do not skimp that balance. It's Surah Rahman. And so Allah is requesting humanity to respect it and acknowledge its importance for our very own existence. He also asks us to maintain it. And what we take with one hand, we give back to the other. And there's so many references throughout the teachings in our religion, especially around biodiversity. The story of Noah alayhi salam, Prophet Noah, quite often the lesson we take from that is that if you don't believe in God, God will wipe you out and start again. But we don't take the message that, what did God ask Noah to take in the ark? It was all the animals, it was the biodiversity, because biodiversity sustains the planet. You know, there's also the story of Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam, that he took into consideration the plight of ants whilst marching his army. And this is the story in the Quran. And whilst the purpose of the Holy Quran is to provide guidance to all of us, but most observers will undoubtedly notice that it's a book on nature too. And it constantly pays tribute to life on earth. And many of the chapters are named after animals and plants, such as Surah Baqarah, the cow, Surah Al-An'am, the cattle, Surah Al-Nahl, bees, ants, the spider, horses, the elephant, man, fig, and nas. And it's constantly asking us, you know, like reflect on how the camel was created, how the sky was raised, the plants are mentioned, such as onions, figs, mustard, pomegranates, trees, lentils, grapes, fruits, garlics, cucumbers, you know, it's all there. And these are signs of Allah's perfection and a reminder of the variety and variability of life on earth. And also, you know, our religion talks to us about biodiversity in the seas, in the rivers, in the water, because we also rely on them for the survival of our life. They're the lifeline of this planet and civilization. The oceans, we know, cover 2/3 of our planet and holds 97% of our planet's water. They produce more than half our oxygen in the atmosphere, and they absorb carbon dioxide. And rivers are equally as important. They provide us with food as well as energy, recreation, transport routes, and water for irrigation. And again, in the Quran, it talks about what the sea provides for us. You know, in Surah 16, it says, ayah number 14, and Allah committed the sea to serve you, to you eat from it tender meat and extract jewelry which you wear, and you see the shrimps roaming it for your commercial benefits as you seek His bounties, that you may be appreciative. And then outside of the Quran, our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he was a huge advocate of protecting nature and biodiversity. And at a time where there appeared to be no environmental rights, again, I specifically mention this because people quite often talk about the Prophet bringing women's rights or human rights and other form of rights, but we've forgotten that he also brought in environmental rights and animal rights. And one of the first things he did when he entered Medina after the migration was declare a 30-kilometer city around the city of Medina as a protected sanctuary, and he prohibited the cutting down of trees within its borders, as well as giving us various protection to other aspects of nature, such as the Himma and Harim zones. And we see this example is now being used by environmentalists around the world to protect regions whose woodlands and grasslands, wetlands, and rangelands are all being threatened. And there's many sayings, you know, where we're being told that protecting biodiversity is an act of worship. It's not like a side thing. It's a form of ibadah. You know, for instance, the hadith about if a Muslim plants a tree or sows a seed, and then a bird or animal or human eats from it, then it's recorded as a sadaqah jariyah. Also, another hadith where the Prophet says there is heavenly reward for every act of kindness done to a living animal. So we know that our Prophet, Muhammad, peace be upon him, his mercy wasn't just limited to humans, and it certainly extended to plants and animal kingdom. And there were, you know, talks, you know, there's narrations of him that whenever him or his companions would dismount a station for a rest during their travels, they would remove all the baggage or seating from the camel so that the camel could also take a break. And there's also, not long ago, there was the launch of the Islamic Declaration on Global Climate Change by Dr. Fazl Khalid of the Islamic Foundation of Environmental and Ecological Sciences. And I just want to quote from that declaration. Which is, we recognize that we are but a minuscule part of the divine order, yet within that order, we are exceptionally powerful beings and have the responsibility to establish good and avert evil in every way we can. We also recognize that we are but one of the multitude of living beings with whom we share the earth. We have no right to abuse the creation or impair it. Intelligence and conscience should lead us, as our faith commands, to treat all things with care and awe, with taqwa of their creator, compassion, rahmah, and utmost good, ihsan. And that, I suppose, leads me to one of my actually favorite ayahs in the Quran, which is from Surah Al-An'am. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to us, there is no creature on or within the earth or bird that flies with its wings except that they are communities like you. And we have not neglected in the register a thing, then unto their Lord they will be gathered. And it's really interesting that the Quran or Allah is referring to biodiversity as communities. And I think we forget what communities mean and what is the definition of communities. And in the dictionary, it defines communities as a group living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common, or group living together and practicing common ownership. Now, let's just reflect on that for a second, and reflect on what the ayah tells us. It's saying to us that biodiversity is not for us to abuse, it's not for us to use, it's not for us to have dominion over, it's not for us to control or overconsume, but for us to treat as a community. So every single variety of plant and animal life on this planet has a role to play, just as different people have roles to play in communities. We're interconnected and there's no getting away from that. So just to conclude, you know, God's created this magnificent world for us, and whilst we enjoy the blessings that this earth provides for us, we must show responsibility, and this responsibility is manifested through our consumption, that we only use what's necessary, through our respect, and it's reflected in maintaining that balance, that we constantly replenish what we have taken. So I suppose we can elaborate on this later, but it's teachings like this that we use within our congregation, our imams, for different aspects of the environment, whether it's biodiversity, energy, water conservation, climate change. We use teachings like this to tap in those values. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamran, for bringing up the whole idea behind Islam and environmentalism. A much known thing, but a big fact, nobody practices it.
Yeah.
And that's a serious issue. And also, we don't see this conversation amongst our youth from the Arab world too. In terms of climate or environment, our young people from our region stands way behind global north. So we have a lot of teachings to follow and implement on a day-to-day basis. Can be a perfect example to become a self-made environmentalist or an activist. You don't have to explore else. We have our own examples in the house. So thank you for bringing up those important topics back to most of our viewers today here. I take forward questions. If anybody has questions to both of our speakers, please go ahead, just unmute your mic and then you can ask your question. If you're willing to write, you can write on the chat. We will take that question and ask our speakers. Thank you.
Actually, first of all, I would like to thank you, Nishad, for this amazing Zoom. Honestly, I find it very helpful and very relevant to our context as Palestinian, as Muslims, not Palestinian. As Dr. Iyad said, that Islam plays an important role in our life, especially as Muslims. Like Islam's has to do with the way that you sleep, the way that you eat, even the way that you think. You should think positively because you believe in God and God will. And I think this is one of the main critiques to to our movement as climate change activists in the region, that we didn't factor on religion. So my question, in addition to this global gathering for all religious men, Dr. Ed, what do you think we can do on a grassroots level? And in Palestine, as someone have been working in the field of youth empowerment and conflict, I witnessed a lot of miracles happened when we used religion. And I'm not talking about things between Palestinians and Israelis. I'm talking about some things that happened here between Muslims and Christians. And we were not able to tackle it. For example, violence in school. We tried several times through UNICEF, where I work, and through several organizations, and all the time it failed because they didn't understand the mentality. They tried to impose something from outside. Eventually, when we went to that school and we spoke with the Muslim religion men and the Christian religion men, they were able to solve the problem over 1 week. And that was a case study for the whole Ministry of Education, like how this, like two men, old men, were able to reshape the mentalities and solve all this big problems happening in that school, where you have fights every day, where you have people, where you have kids like from this group beating a kid from that group, then they have to beat them back. So I think that was like an example where religion can play an important role, especially as also Dr. Iyad said, on young people. We're very attached to religion here. Like people start fasting from a very early age. They're proud if they do pray, even if they do something that is not complying with Islam. They're doing as like something wrong or like feeling shy that they didn't doing it. So I think we should factor on it, not only for religion men on international level, but I think we should, if we can, like hear from you, Dr. Iyad, any ideas where we can do it in a grassroots level.
Thank you, Saad, and happy to have another Palestinian on the call. Yes, we're very much cognizant of that things actually happen on the ground with the real people on the ground, with the everyday person. So the initiative has started at the global level because we wanted to bring the principles of religions to the policy making. You know, the UN for many years tried to shy away from dealing with religions. But now we understand that we cannot do so. Religious leaders and religion principles are very important to be tapped into, not used, but to be integrated into the everyday's living of people. So yes, we have started at the global level. However, the Faith for Earth initiative has also plans to work at the grassroots root levels. The Faith for Earth coalition that I am talking about will have national chapters. And in fact, we've started the first one in India. So there's now Faith for Earth India. Another one is in the making, which is Faith for Earth Lebanon. A third one is Faith for Earth Bosnia. I will be very happy to partner with you and with the Arab Youth Climate Movement to have Faith for Earth Qatar. And we can use all the activities, all the principles, all the knowledge, all the documents.
We have one for Palestine too.
Definitely, if you are in Palestine, definitely we can do so. So this becomes not only global, but also local, and we are working on the regional level. The Council of the Youth that we are establishing will have a global steering committee, but will have regional hubs and local hubs, and they will all be connected. So we have envisaged this complete picture because it is not another initiative that we just preach and brag and talk about things. We need things to happen at the local level. We need the imam, every imam, when they go to the mosque on Fridays. Yes, indeed, it is important to talk about lying and cheating and what have you, but it's also very important to talk about environmental stewardship and how Islam is related to that, and how Islam is calling upon all of us to practice, environmentalism, as Kamran just mentioned. Probably Islam is the religion of environment, or sometimes they call it the green deen. It is full of environmental issues. Talking about air pollution, I have on my website, verses from the Quran talking about air pollution and the role of wind and so on. Talking about pollination, talking about water, even the cosmic, everything that we need to know about environment is actually in the Holy Quran and the practices of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So we need that to be translated into the local level. When I go to a Friday prayer, I want to go out energized. out of the prayer on Friday, energized and determined to do something. And I want to do that with my fellow Muslims who are praying with me. We can, go out and plant around the mosque or in the local community some trees and so on. So good deeds are not only donating money to a mosque, but also donating seedlings of trees. Encouraging the mosque to work on solar systems. So yes, a lot of things can be and should be and will be done by the local communities and at the grassroots levels.
Can I just add to that quickly?
Please.
Also, it's I mean, the question about working on a grassroots level and making it effective is a very interesting one. And it's important to realize that the term grassroots level is very broad. And so it's also best to identify which section of the grassroots community you want to work with, and try not to be the jack of all trades and try to change everybody. If you folks see faith leaders have their way of working, young people have their way of working, women have their way of working, and it would be best to focus on one of them or two of them and tap into where they make the most, who can have the biggest influence, the biggest change. And I know my speech probably sounded a bit preachy, but I find when you're working with the grassroots level, less words, more action, and very, very subtly throw in the faith teachings. Did you know Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did this? And they say, oh, really? No, we didn't know. And so I suppose it's a bit like the nudge theory, slowly bring people on board. Like with our imams, for instance, they were just not interested in the beginning. It wasn't on their radar, and we had to do it slowly. There's no point arguing with them either and saying, well, climate change is going to kill us all, and where are you? Because then you've lost them. You have to empathize with their way of learning and slowly bring them on board. So there has to be a lot of give and take in mobilizing the grassroots community.
Thank you, Shezad. I have one question on the chat from one of our viewers to Mr. Iyad, I believe. Can you share an example of a success you've had with religious actors affecting environmental policy change with their governments? Any success stories working with any faith religious groups in your experience? Maybe she wants to know examples. Maybe she wants to know the success rates. Does it work really in reality?
It does, and there are many success stories that I can talk about. In Kenya, for example, the Church of Nairobi was inspired by the Faith for Earth initiative, and they have established what they call environment ministry, a ministry within the church, and they called it the Stewards of Eden. This ministry is connected to the parliament in Kenya. So they have started working with the parliamentarians, and then the parliamentarians have started, yes, this is very good, and yes, we want as Christians or Muslims in the parliament to talk about environmental issues from a religious perspective and of adopt the values and principles of the religion. Of course, at the global level, what we are doing, and this is something that is, the thing that will make or break the whole story. We have what we call our UN Environment Assembly, which is the parliament of the environment of the world. And currently, there are a couple of governments and many, many faith leaders are working together to come up with a resolution. The assembly, like the General Assembly of the UN, every 2 years we come up with dozens of environmental resolutions and decisions that are adopted by governments. So this year, hopefully, we will come up with a decision or a resolution that is based on religious values and the integration of religions into the decision making. If we do not, because some governments shy away from saying, well, religion, let's have religion contribute and so on. We are not saying it has to be religion. We are saying the values, the principles, the morals, that all of them stem from our religious values. So there are very good stories that we can talk about. If you wish, you can go to our website. There are many articles, many stories that are there. At least we are empowering the faith-based organizations at the global level. For example, working with Islamic Relief in Kenya, we're empowering the women, the rural women in Kenya, to use sustainable agricultural principles. And those are supported by a faith organization working on the Islamic values, integrating, in the Holy Quran, there are a mention of 57 species in the Quran. In the Bible, 134 plants are mentioned in the Bible. So the importance, even, before having the red list of IUCN or, the endangered species and so on, religions have actually mentioned all of them.
Can I also give an example of the UK? Last year, our former Prime Minister, Theresa May, she in June, she announced that the UK would become the first major economy to legislate for a net zero emissions target, and they went on to legislate for it. And we were the first country to do that. However, in the tweet, the official tweet that went out from the Prime Minister, she specifically thanked the faith community and faith leaders for their campaigning and advocacy alongside others. And just like Iyad mentioned earlier about UN not engaging with faith previously, it's very similar with the UK. So for the faith community to have seen that message shows that they had an impact in legislating for a net zero emissions target. And I'll send you some details on that.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll just quickly, just want to quickly ask you about the encyclical, the Pope's encyclical. It has been very powerful, actually.
Say that probably your speakers are on too loud.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay. No, I mean, I want to ask you particularly about the role of, the Pope's encyclical. It has a very profound effect. Like whenever he made this encyclical, there was quite a lot of discussion emerged, and there's been a lot of commentary written about that one. And how do you see that has kind of an impact at overall faith-based discussion at a global level, especially Christianity, which has a huge followers in the world? What has made a difference at a global scale, and particularly coming back to on an Islamic point of view, I want to know from research perspective how much theologically advanced it has been to address some of the more common concerns. The emerging concerns like environmental justice, environmental rights, and even environmental racism, and all this kind of new concepts that keeps coming out in the recent years, and how well in terms of theological perspective from Islamic jurisprudence perspective has been discussed. And do you see there's a lot of research going on that front to expand using our scriptures? So I just want to know your perspective on that one.
Well, if I may start the answer, and then Kamran can contribute as well. No doubt, Laudato Si has had a global impact. It's an excellent encyclical, an excellent letter to humanity. The Vatican is working day and night. They have established the Dicastery for Integral Human Development. that is empowered by not only very good scientific knowledge, but also resources. I am working with them. Incidentally, we will be celebrating the 5th anniversary of Laudato Si in a few days. Actually, we have started the Laudato Si week on the 16th, and it will continue on, until the 24th. I have had the pleasure of holding the 2nd International Conference on Laudato Si in Kenya with the participation of 360 young people from around the world, and so on and so forth. So it did contribute. Actually, working on SDGs, it was also an inspiration in 2015 when it was first launched to the global community. So the Vatican is very much praised for their work on Laudato Si. And they are launching, for example, this year, they're launching because of the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, they are launching 50 cities or 50 Laudato Si cities, 50 Laudato Si schools, 50 Laudato Si churches, 50 Laudato Si communities, and so on. So they are launching massive campaigns with Catholics and others at the global level. Now, when we come to Islam, and of course, Laudato Si is a comprehensive concept that addressed biodiversity, economy, climate change, and so on. When we come to Islam, we have done something, but there's still a long way to go. Of course, there has been lots of publications on environment and Islam. There was the global statement on climate change, the declaration. I have worked with the Organization of Islamic Cooperation with 57 Islamic countries who have adopted what they call the strategy on engaging with faith-based organizations just last October at their conference. And we're working with Kamran and many other Muslim scholars on coming up with an Islamic Laudato Si or an Islamic charter that will need to be comprehensive, will need to reflect the beautiful Quran and the inclusion of different aspects of environment and the practice, the Muslim practices, not only 1400 years ago, but a couple of hundred years ago in the Ottoman Empire, where when they had snowfall, for example, people used to go and throw seeds for birds to eat. So there are so many good Islamic practices that we need to bring up and bring back to the normal communities. Kamran, I'm sure you can add to this.
Kamran?
Yeah, so yeah, ditto to everything you say about Laudato Si. I mean, I've read it and I'm a big fan of it, and it speaks to everybody, even speaks to me. They have the added benefit of being one big body, so they're able to push it out and make it into one big, make it look quite impressive, and it is. In fact, they have a feature movie coming out soon. And I don't know if you've seen Iyad, the trailer. It's like an awesome trailer.
Please do share. Please do share. I would love to.
Yeah, I will. I don't think it's out in the public yet, but I've seen it. But I was a little bit jealous in a nice way. I thought, yeah, I could. And I suppose it's very important that once we have, I know Iyad's working on the Islamic Charter on environment or something like this, that we all get behind it. And then we don't just get behind it, but we turn it into action. Because having it on a paper, having it in a declaration is meaningless if we're not getting behind it. So when that happens, it's important that we all promote it. In terms of environmental justice and the jurisprudence, this is one of the bees in my bonnet at the moment, because people like Fazlul Khalid and there's other organizations like ARC and others who've been doing this for years and years. 30, 40 years. And now we're playing catch up, you know, and eco or being green is seen as something progressive. Hey, look at us, when it's not really. We shouldn't have to be, there's no such thing as being an environmentalist or environmental activist. But it's better now than not at all. And about the jurisprudence, I know because I've looked into a lot of the old fiqh books and even the seminaries of Islamic scholars. Many of those teachings already have the fiqh of food, the fiqh of tahara, the fiqh of water. All these are already there, and they're very environmentally friendly. They have all the solutions to the problems we're facing. But unfortunately, there's a massive disconnection between what people are practicing in real life. Like if you talk about water conservation, the book of Tahara in many fiqh books talk about conserving water and about saving water and using minimum water, not wasting. Yet the tap is a major innovation that we use to waste water. So it's being innovative with our imams and teachers to reclaim that lost ground and saying, look, have you considered this is what, you know, your jurisprudent books teach about various things. So I think as I see, the faith for the earth is very important, because when we started this work here, I'll be honest, when we started it in Birmingham, it was just, I was seen as a mad tree hugger, a loony, and the imams would laugh at me. But now when I tie it into what is being done in Faith for the Earth, and on a UN level, it gives me extra brownie points, and it allows me to tie them in with something prestigious. That look, the UN want to hear what you have to say, and it makes them get involved in a lot more. And I'm sure with those 4 strands that were mentioned earlier, that we'll be able to start re-exploring the teachings of Islamic jurisprudence and making it more relevant to what we need it to be today.
Thank you, Kamran. Dr. Iyad, I have a question. Like, okay, now we saw the bright side, but what was the challenge in having all this religious group, you know, come up with idea? Because we are more known for divisions across all the religions. And how you break that barrier? You know, what are the difficulties you faced as coming up with Faith for Earth initiative under the UN?
Well, of course, there are challenges and barriers. One of them was alluded to by Kamran. For example, the Catholics, they have one religious leader. They all, you know, relate to. And it's one organization that can dictate something or can propose something, and people will listen and practice. In other religions, there are many sects, and there's no one leadership that you can rely on. For example, Egyptians rely on the Azhar. In Saudi Arabia, rely on the Mufti, and so on. So there's no one single leadership that can bring everybody together. However, of course, we're hoping that the Organization of Islamic Cooperation might actually be a much better and powerful force, because they not only link the Islam itself, but also they are representing governments and, you know, systems and institutions. So we're working on the Islamic with the Organization of Islamic Cooperation on that. So hopefully that hierarchy will be somehow dealt with. The other challenge is the misconceptions of religions. For example, working with the evangelicals, they say, among other religions, of course, not only specifically to them, they are saying, well, this is God's willing. God wants climate to change. How should we fight climate change? Because this is what God is making. He is telling us this is the end of the world. So we have to accept it. These hurricanes and these are part of God's scheme. And so the misconception, we need to dissipate it, because, you know, it gives the wrong impression and the wrong advice to the people. And luckily, I met with the leadership of the World Evangelical Alliance just 2 months ago, just immediately before the closure in Bonn. and met with the highest 20 leaders of the world evangelical. And they signed on environmental stewardship because now they are becoming ready. They are seeing what the science is telling them, the practices and how we are changing because of our practices. God did not tell us to abuse his creation, did not tell us to waste. So the waste and abuse is actually causing the environmental issues and not, of course, God's scheme that is. A third challenge is how to empower women faith leaders. Because we know some religions, of course, they have the supremacy of men as faith leaders, although in their teachings, it is empowerment of women. And we all brag about how beautiful these religions are in terms of treating women. But when it comes to leadership, then we have a challenge. But fortunately, at the global level, we're seeing more women leaders, women faith leaders in different religions, even in Islam and the Catholic faith. So these are the challenges that I see, and we're working on, working around them.
And I suppose breaking those barriers is talking to different people in a language that suits them. There's no one language that works for everybody. So if you're talking to secular-based organizations, I find it's not normally helpful to talk about the theological side of because they're not interested in what the Quran has to say or what the Bible has to say. Rather, to secular-based organizations, you can talk to them about the power of mobilization and the power of influence faith-based organizations or your mosque or church or gurdwara has. Then they'll suddenly say, okay, we can work with them because they have access to 2,000 people who come on a Friday prayer. Same with if you're talking to the Shia community, for instance, talk to them in language that talks to them, not use scriptures that doesn't resonate with them. I mean, and also with the environmental work, it's very universal. In our locality, we have 3 mosques who come from different theological backgrounds, and in 30 years, we've never ever knocked on each other's door. We didn't want to know each other for whatever reasons. We don't even know why. I think it's just the way we grew up. But we've used the environment as a way to come together and do street cleanups together, to do joint workshops together. We did a shared iftar called Our Shared Earth, where we did a street iftar, a very environmentally friendly iftar. So it's I suppose taking the positives and enjoying people's companies and using language and motivation that works for each other.
Thank you, Shezad. Thank you, Dr. Iyad. I know we are past an hour now. I don't want to take much time of both of yours very precious time. Just before we wind up, I would just want to hear final remarks. What would be your message from Dr. Iyad to young people from the Arab world who are practicing Islamic faith, how they have been always behind the bars, when it comes to environmental advocacy, they are a bit behind. There are a couple of organizations coming up, and what are your advices to them? And to Shezad, being Islamic faith followers in this part of the world, what can they do? I mean, like you said, we got away from the reality of Islam and its teachings, and we are trying to find something on the West, probably something like that. So how can we go back to what it used to be and be that advocate with own faith? The practicing faith itself is your activism. How can we go back to the root cause? Dr. Iyad first.
Thank you, Nishad. Well, what I would like to say is probably just be jealous. Be jealous of other communities. I am really very sad to see little engagement of young people in volunteerism in general in our region, okay? Let alone working on environmentalism, let alone working on faith and environment. We need to step up as young people of this, huge, we have almost 420 million Arabs. We need them to step up, and we need them to start working for the local community. I know there are economic and social challenges facing the region. I know there are political challenges that probably might hinder their activities, but we're not doing anything except doing something positive for the environment, for the local communities, and so on. So I would encourage, like you did, the Arab Youth Network for the climate change and so on. But we need to expand that. We need to establish many, many more organizations working on environmental issues. So just be jealous and see the global leadership of young people. We need to, we're not less than them. We have too much to offer. We have a lot to offer. And so engage. And I am opening, my arms and my, the initiative to start establishing local chapters of this initiative to work with local communities and so on. So just be proactive and do what you're conscious, because this is a conscious challenge that we need all to work on. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Iyad. That's really kind, and I hope this message resonates amongst the young people in the Arab world. Mr. Kamran.
Yeah, don't let anybody tell us that young people are the future. They're not the future, they're the here and now. That's very important. And people use, of course, the older generation use that they're our future so that they can carry on holding power now. So it's important that our youngsters, keep reminding everybody that, look, we're here, we need to be consulted. We're living. And I think the mobilization that we're seeing from young people in these last few years has been like never before. The climate strikes, Greta Thunberg, all sorts. So there's a huge lesson for us in that. So people do listen, and you'll find people sometimes hate on youngsters because they don't like young people telling them what to do, if you've noticed. So they're doing something right. And relating it to a faith perspective, if you look at the life of our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and this is something I always constantly remind myself, is our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was, we believe he was the greatest ever creation, the greatest creation. He was the perfect being. But yet his entire life was a struggle, because struggle is a sunnah. It's one of the biggest sunnahs. But at the end of that struggle, there is something beautiful. And so we should also see our struggles, our hard work, especially the young people, that let's carry on struggling, let's fighting for environmental justice, and there will be light at the end for us. We will get there.
Inshallah, we hope so. And may the good lights of Ramadan and the upcoming Eid gives us that extra power to do and move forward. And I thank you, both of you. It's a great pleasure and honor for AYCM to host such eminent speakers today. And thank you all for who were able to make it. I know sometimes timing is an issue to have more people join us, but yes, the video is available, which will be on our YouTube channels, and we'll be sharing with you both the speakers too. And I take this opportunity to thank you, and we would love to engage with you. We will be in touch with both of you so that we learn from you and bring that here to our region and also practice what we preach. So thank you so much. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Nishad. Thank you, and God bless you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.